Hello and a warm welcome to our third in a series of special live webinars from Zero Waste Scotland on behalf of the Scottish Government. My name is Jenny Fraser and I work in the communications team here at Zero Waste Scotland. Today we will be exploring the topic of minimising the impact of disposal of residual waste in the context of the current public consultations for delivering a circular economy in Scotland. In addition, we'll be taking your questions live. So there are two complementary consultations. The first being proposals for a circular economy and delivering a circular economy, a route map to 2025 and beyond, both of which are open for responses until the 22nd of August. So you've still got plenty of time. We're calling this series of webinars and our communications around the consultations Living Circular, because essentially that's what the proposals are all about. Making the shift to a more circular way of living. So I'm delighted to welcome to the broadcast our guest panel of speakers. Today, they're going to be discussing the scope of the consultations, specifically focusing on minimising the impact of disposal, as well as answering any questions that you might have. So I'm going to let the panel members introduce themselves. So we'll start up in the top corner. Sorry, Robin, I'm picking on you first. Robin, over to you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Robin Stimson. I'm the Managing Director of Hamilton Waste and Recycling, based here just outside Edinburgh in a place called Musselburgh.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us, Robin.
Thank
and
you.
Over to you, Andy, at the bottom.
Hi, I'm Andy Sullivan. I'm working the National Waste Unit at SEPA. I have a broad responsibility for waste policy across from strategy to operational issues.
Wonderful. Thanks again for joining. And finally, last but not least, the lovely Jane.
Thank you. I'm Jane Beasley and I work for Zero Waste Scotland and I'm the project lead for the route map.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jane. So the webinar today is being brought to you live. However, if you need to leave before the end or you've just joined us, you can catch up later as it's being recorded and will be available to view later on. You can ask a question by using the chat element in the live feed or using the hashtag #LivingCircular. Or you can also send an email to livingcircular@zerowastescotland.org.uk. The format for today is as follows. In a moment, we're going to play a pre-recorded video from Jane Beasley, who'll do a broad introduction of the CE bill and the route map consultations. And then we'll take some questions to the panel. If you've just joined us if you previously joined us on a previous lunchtime seminar, you may have already seen this intro to the presentation. So feel free to carry on with some of your work, or you can grab a quick cuppa and come back in 10 minutes if you don't want a repeat. In the second half of the session, Jane will take a deeper dive into package 6 of the route map on disposal, and we'll end the webinar with a detailed Q&A on that. So please do remember to submit your questions as we go through. And it's great actually to see that we've got some coming in already. But before we get on to them, let's watch that video from Jane. Over to you.
Welcome to our lunchtime webinar series where we are focusing on specific areas or themes within the route map and the circular economy bill. So I'm going to start by giving you a quick overview of the consultation documents and providing some context on the discussions that we're having at the moment. So the route map and the circular economy bill, they're very much complementary consultations. So they're designed to help us move from a take, make and dispose model to a much more circular way of living, keeping materials in use for longer. The need to really speed up and make more progress in changing how we do things is very apparent, and it's becoming much more pressing in recent years. So we're aware that around 4/5 of Scotland's carbon footprint comes from the products and services that we manufacture, that we use, and then we throw away. In addition, we recognise that 90% of global biodiversity loss and water stress is caused by resource extraction and processing. Therefore, we need to act. And whilst progress has been made in this space, we need to do more and at speed. Looking first at the route map, this document very much sets out how we intend to deliver our system-wide comprehensive vision for Scotland's circular economy. So it builds on achievements made and actions underway with a real focus on existing waste and recycling targets up to 2025, and then looking beyond in terms of wider measures to develop much more circular systems and support our carbon ambitions. The route map really is a call to action, and we need to work with a wide range of stakeholders. So recognising that together is the only way that we can bring about the change required. So if you've had the chance already to look through the content, you will notice that a do, develop, investigate framework approach has been applied to the actions. So this recognises that not all of the policy measures are fully ready to be implemented in Scotland. Some do need further research or refining, and some need more work on their feasibility. Finally, the route map specifies legislative requirements to give us the powers to act. And this is indicated by a little cross next to specific interventions and measures, and that should show you the linkages with the Circular Economy Bill. So the route map is arranged into 7 distinct packages. So package 1, promote responsible consumption, production and reuse. That's really focused on upstream measures to look at how we can prevent that waste generation and maximise resource value through more sustained product choices. And it also ensures that we try and optimise the use of products and materials already in circulation. Package 2, reduce food waste. This is really aligned with the Food Waste Reduction Action Plan, and it addresses whole food systems. The idea is to reset our attitudes towards food waste and enhance our circular bioeconomy and actually give us better data so we can try and understand our progress better. Package 3, improve recycling from households. There is a really, really big focus on making recycling easier than disposal and designing and delivering services that maximise recycling performance and help us achieve much more consistency at local level. It's really about sharing best practice and supporting local authorities, and then also embedding decisions about recycling in the design and sale of products and making sure that we've got transparency and can generate much more confidence in the recycling process. Package 4, improve recycling from commercial businesses. This is focused on looking at the commercial waste data that we have and making improvements in that space, providing incentives for commercial businesses to really focus on how they can increase reuse and recycling, and supporting investment in commercial waste collection services and tackling waste crime. Package 5, embed circular construction practices. So there's been a significant focus on reuse and embodied carbon. And the idea is that we can try and improve the collaboration between government, industry and stakeholders. That's there, but it needs to be optimised. Look at how we can incentivise sustainable construction practices, bringing forward best practice across all areas and really improve our understanding of how and where waste is generated. Package 6, minimise the impact of disposal. So this is about helping manage materials in the right way, encouraging innovation while maintaining stability, and exploring the scope of a much more targeted approach to the Scottish landfill tax. And package 7 is cross-cutting measures. So this includes strategic interventions, which includes the circular economy strategy, monitoring framework and targets, research, data and evidence. So supporting a programme of research in 2022, 2023, specifically on behavioural change, fiscal incentives, material-specific priorities, those type of things. Sustainable procurement, recognising the important role that procurement can play in delivering much more sustainable and circular practices, and skills and training, with a real focus on greater uptake in green skills and the opportunities that this can present. So moving on to the Circular Economy Bill. So whilst the route map identifies a range of potential interventions and sets that clear direction of travel for the next 5 to 10 years, the bill consultation includes a number of primary legislative provisions that will help deliver some of the interventions explored in the route map, but also extends into other areas as well. So the programme for government in 21-22 included a commitment to bring forward a circular economy bill. And the idea is to really help facilitate the development of an economy which reduces demand for raw materials and designs products to last as long as possible, encouraging reuse, repair and recycling along the way. So this consultation builds on previous measures, but also introduces a range of new proposals, which includes, but is not exclusively, legislative provisions to help deliver the route map. So looking at the focus of the Circular Economy Bill, so the content of the bill does go beyond just the route map, and it's split into 4 main sections. So strategic interventions, they look at the circular economy strategy obligations and look at strategy targets and see how useful they can be. Reduce and reuse, these include measures to ban the destruction of unsold durable goods and also bring in environmental charging for single-use items and mandatory reporting of waste and surplus. Recycle, this is focused on strengthening the approach to the Household Recycling Charter, looking at targets to support recycling performance, duty of care for households and business recycling collection zoning, and littering and improving enforcement. This is littering from vehicles and seizure of vehicles involved in waste crime. So just looking at this illustration, don't worry if it's tricky to read the content clearly. So this diagram does feature in both the route map and the Circular Economy Bill documents, but it is a useful illustration to really present a snapshot of what's in train and what's being proposed in this space. And it is a snapshot. It doesn't cover everything that's in either the route map or the Circular Economy Bill, but it draws out some key elements. There are a couple of things to think about. So firstly, single measures really are not enough. It's the interactions between the packages and between the different measures that are important to drive change. The other thing is there's a significant amount of activity taking place up to 2025. And there's a real mix of measures. Some are enabling, some are direct interventions, and in particular, there's significant work packages already underway for 22 and 23. So finally, these consultations are just the start of what we believe to be a national conversation in this space. We have made strong progress in reducing emissions in the waste and resources sector over the last 20 years, and we have taken significant strides in our efforts to tackle Scotland's throwaway culture and promote recycling. The bill will increase the levers we have available to us, and the route map sets out the actions to really accelerate progress. We do recognise that the circular economy and waste policy is a really complex landscape, and we need both legislative and non-legislative measures, and this hopefully is reflected in both the consultation documents. So we need you now to share with us your views to ensure that we can continue to work together and make the progress that we know we need to do to live more sustainably and protect our resources and our wider environment.
That's great, Jane. Thank you so much for that summary. It's really good to get a comprehensive overview of everything that it's about. So the questions have been coming in thick and fast, and it's great to see such support and interest in the consultation. Remember, you've still got time to submit your questions. You can share your thoughts and questions via our social media channels, even in the chat elements of this live feed, or via Twitter hashtag #LivingCircular. And just while we're talking about the live feed, let's just do a big hello to Tunisia and Kurdistan. Nice to have some people from across the globe. So we're going to move across to some of the questions that have been coming in. So we're going to start with you, Jane. So which consultation should stakeholders seek to complete? Which one do you think is the most important?
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, probably the first thing to point out is they are both equally as important. And I'm not just saying that because we have a real passion for this subject. They're complementary, but they do serve different purposes. So the CE bill is all about the primary legislation. And as I've said earlier, it isn't just confined to the route map, but it really sets out what the legislative levers we require to kind of move things on. The route map is a bit more comprehensive. It's that real call for action. It's a mix of actions, mix of measures, mix of different interventions, some of which require legislation, and you'll see that by the cross next to them, and we can use the linkages over to the CE bill. But others don't. Others are things that we can start to make a move on sooner. They require collaboration, partnership working, improving best practice, and so on. So they serve slightly different roles in moving us forward. So I would take a look at both of them. And if you're short on time, then just really focus on the areas where you have expertise or you have a specific interest in. They're broken down into the different packages. You can dip in and out of them. You can take your time as you go through them. Don't feel like you have to answer all of the questions within there. So really kind of target it down where you think you can bring some value. You think you want your voice to be heard in this discussion, and just make those cross references over to the CE bill as well.
Thanks for that, Jane. And how should people submit their responses? How do people actually get involved?
Good question. We do need people to formally submit responses. So go to either the Scottish Government website. You can just Google for the consultations if you don't know the exact links. You can go through Zero Waste Scotland. You can go through our Living Circular Hub. We've got links on there that will take you directly to the consultation document. If you do it online, you can just take your time, fill in sections. You can save your responses. You can go back. But that's the best way to do it, to get it formally recognised and kind of in the pot of all the responses. You've got to the 22nd of August, so you've got time. So please do it. Please go for it, because we do want to hear from you. We want to make this as deliverable as possible. And the only way we can do that is if we have all of our stakeholders contributing and talking to us and sharing their expertise.
Thanks, Jane. Yes, it's so important to get everyone's input. So we'll move across to Robin now, if that's okay. Robin, how are you planning to respond to the consultation? Will you be doing it independently or as part of a membership or a representative group?
Well, I mean, there's a number of waste and recycling associations, so I think it'll be a mix of people like Euroc and RMAS and CISA, and also individual companies will do that as well, maybe do both. But I think a number of businesses across the waste sector, they've already been investing in a number of things to meet some of these technology advancements and the investments in. So you've got the Biffa guys doing the plastics, and you've got BIN doing EFW, and then probably closer to home, we've invested further in our MRF processing and SRF production. So, we can see some of the things coming down the line, but I think the answer to your question is it'll be a mix of trade bodies and individual businesses.
Great, thank you for that. Okey-doke, so we've actually had a question come in that I'm just going to put out to the panel. So this might be a question that would be better directed at specific local authorities, but in Aberdeen City, residents are charged for disposal of garden waste in their brown bin, and in Aberdeenshire, we only get a small food waste bin. Garden waste is not accepted by the council collection. Surely it would be more sensible to charge for general waste collection and therefore incentivise responsible disposal of waste and penalise waste to landfill while helping offset landfill for the councils. What's our thoughts on that, panel?
Can I just jump in quickly just to say, very good question, very good points raised. Within the household recycling package, we do explore the issues of how we charge, what the sort of systems are at the moment, and also looking at co-design principles. So please feed your thoughts through the questions that relate to that, because they're valid. The points you've made are valid, and they're interesting discussions that we're having at the moment. We've got some research active in this space. So yeah, there is an opportunity to have a discussion in this area.
Great, thank you for that, Jane. Okey-doke, so thanks to our panel for answering those questions, and do remember to keep the question. Now I'd like to hand over to Jane again, who's going to go over the minimising the impact of disposal package of the route map and what that actually covers. So if I just pass across to you, Jane.
Thank you. So the focus of today's session is looking more closely at the disposal package. So this is all about how we can minimise any waste remaining, which ultimately will require some kind of disposal or management option. It is worth reminding ourselves, though, that the measures outlined elsewhere in this consultation are primarily focused on reducing our resource use in the first instance. So looking at how we can prevent materials and products from even becoming waste, and then how we can maximise the value of materials and products already in circulation. So obviously our goal is to continue to reduce how much residual waste we produce. But obviously, again, until we move to a fully circular economy, we do need to consider how we can minimise the impact of anything that we do have left over. So we want to achieve the best environmental outcomes for materials that can't be captured for reuse or for recycling, and ensure that we have environmental and economic value of any wasted resources and energy to be harnessed really, really effectively. So the way we want to do this is to help manage materials in the right way. We want to look at how we can encourage innovation whilst maintaining stability. And we also want to explore the scope of a more targeted approach to the Scottish landfill tax and look at other fiscal measures as well. So looking at what's been done so far, it's really worth kind of reiterating, I guess, the important role of the landfill tax. We have to acknowledge the important role it's played and the kind of direct impact it's had on waste that's been sent to landfill. So the landfill tax rates have increased over time, and the reduction in the proportion of waste sent to landfill that we've seen has been driven in part by this increase in landfill tax. So approximately 2.6 million tonnes of material was sent to landfill in 2020. This is less than half of what was sent in 2005, so significant progress has been made. In terms of activity currently underway, a ban on biodegradable municipal waste going to landfill has been introduced, and although the full ban doesn't come into force across Scotland until the 31st of December 25, we have already seen a marked reduction in the amount of material being sent to landfill since that ban was introduced. There'll also be a consultation 22 on extending the ban to include biodegradable non-municipal waste, to really further reduce the amount of this waste stream that's being sent to landfill. Scottish Government commissioned an independent review of the role incineration plays in Scotland's waste hierarchy, and this included analysis of capacity requirements and options for residual waste treatment, and also included decarbonisation opportunities. So this report was published in May. There were 14 recommendations, 2 of which are pending further work, and Scottish Government issued its response in June, which accepted the 12 provisions and awaiting the outcome of further research into the 2 provisional ones. There are significant linkages with the route map, not just in the disposal package, but upstream measures as well. So if you go and have a look through the incineration review, you'll see where there's crossover, and you'll see how lots of the measures that we've got upstream will really help deliver some of the recommendations and priorities for action. We also have the draft National Planning Framework 4, which includes measures to ensure that new energy from waste plants are much more sustainable. Zero Waste Scotland, we commissioned a review of biostabilisation of waste, where waste is treated to reduce its biodegradability before being sent to landfill, and that research will be published in a few months' time. And finally, work is underway to expand the existing landfill gas capture programme by 2023 to really mitigate the negative effects of landfill.
I think Jane might have just dropped off there briefly. We'll just hold fire for a minute. We'll get Jane back in a second. I think her internet's maybe a little bit shy when it comes to presenting. If she doesn't come back in a second, what we can do is head across to another question instead. Oh, she's
back. Thank you, Jen. Do you know what? Gremlins in the computers do definitely keep us on our toes. I was just about to launch into the exciting bit as well, which is our proposals. So I'll hopefully be able to get through these without any more glitches. So I want to talk about what's been proposed in the consultation. There's 3 main proposals that have been put forward. So these build on the effort that's already gone in place to reduce the need for disposal as much as possible. So like I say, we reflect back on the other packages in the route map. So we need to look at what's already going on with design of products through use and reuse, maximising recycling, that type of thing. So building on from that, we want to focus on what the best approach is to take for what we have left. So the very first proposal is to develop a residual waste plan by 2024. This is to ensure the best environmental outcome for any materials and set the strategic direction for the management of residual waste to 2045, and to bring this in line with net zero targets. So this is develop action. So I mentioned previously about the do, develop and investigate. The idea would be to establish an advisory panel to really oversee the development of this plan, looking at bringing the Scottish Government together, public sector, private industry representatives, and also NGOs. So the plan will then transition us from a weight-driven approach to one that seeks the best environmental outcome for the different materials. And it'll also take account of national strategic infrastructure planning. It will also look at emerging and future technologies and other mechanisms for how we can encourage innovation in this space. If this gets taken forward, then we'll look at a range of different policy measures in how we can develop the plan. So this will include things like options on how we can use the Scottish landfill tax and the aggregates levy separately or jointly to drive further recycling and develop secondary markets in this space. We also look at alternative pathways for sorting residues by researching what potential uses there are out there, treatment options. We'll do some cost benefit analysis. We'll look at market demand and look at different implementation measures to try and take this forward. We'll also look at what actions we need to address the recommendations of the independent review of incineration capacity, which I just mentioned. So that will look at what the national capacity requirements are, what other external impacts we need to take into consideration, and decarbonisation opportunities as well. And then we'll also look at how we can invest to transition to a lower emission residual treatment option to really kind of develop a much more integrated and optimized treatment solutions approach and ensure that any retreat from landfill is planned, it's strategic, it's effective. The second one is about facilitating the development of a sector-led plan by 2024 to restrict the carbon impacts of incineration. This is also a develop action. So this builds on, I mentioned that there were 2 provisional recommendations from the incineration review. So there is a large piece of work that's going on at the moment to consider what options there are to decarbonise the residual waste sector. So the intention is to use the outputs from this piece of work and consider where those options are, how we can incentivise to move things forward, and also how we can future-proof energy from waste facilities, future-proof for carbon capture and storage, that type of thing. So we want to work really closely with the sector in this space to ensure that we can really, really accelerate progress. And finally, investigate further fiscal measures to incentivise low carbon disposal. So this is an investigate action. We want to consider what fiscal measures could be introduced to really reduce the carbon emissions associated with any of our disposal activities. So particularly looking at the incineration of waste. So as part of that, we're looking to investigate the potential of an incineration tax, and also the inclusion of energy from waste within the scope of the UK emissions trading scheme, and then determine an appropriate carbon price for waste sector emissions. And that's that. Thank you.
That's great, Jane. I saw your presentation in the rehearsal yesterday and I found it interesting. And I found it even more interesting today because I properly understood it a wee bit more. So that's great. Thank you for that. Okay, so we'll move on to some of our questions because we've really had lots coming in on package 6 received from some of our viewers, which is fabulous. So Andy, we're going to start with you if that's okay. The proposals set out the need for a residual waste plan by 2024 to set strategic direction for the management of residual waste. Why do you think this is needed, and why is it important to develop a plan for residual waste?
Okay, thanks, Jenny, and thanks for sending in the questions. So, I mean, I guess from my perspective, the residual waste management has been probably the neglected part of Scottish waste policy for a long time, and to have a plan that allows us to set our objectives for residual waste management, that fundamental shift away from landfill. Bearing in mind, we've made a huge amount of progress already, moving from 7 million tons landfilled in 2005 to 2.6 today. You know, a big shift. But to really kind of keep that going and try and set some objectives around the decarbonisation of residual waste management, I think it's important to have a plan. It's important to provide some confidence for investment and the kind of framework within which those investments can be made. Now, to some extent, the horse has already bolted, and we've already developed quite a lot of new residual waste treatment infrastructure. But it's still, I think, it's never too late to do this and to do this well. One of the main things that I'd like to see in that is a really good bit of data modeling that models how much residual waste there is out there and projects that forward over a number of time horizons, taking into account changes in design and recycling and anticipated sort of shifts in behavior, allowing us to really understand, what we're going to have to manage in the future and what we're going to do about it and what we're going to build and where.
Great, thank you for that, Andy. And Robin, if I could just bring you into this one as well, what would you like to see in a residual waste plan? It'd be good to get industry views on what's actually important here.
Okay, I think for me, the things I'd like to see is managing some action against materials that can already be recycled or diverted away from landfill. So things like mattresses, aggregates, wood, plasterboard, plastics. There's a lot of investment already been made by a number of companies. There's plenty, there's 3 or 4 wash plants that have opened up now. Ourselves, Brewster's, Malcolm's, NWH have all invested heavily in wash plants so that we can get recycled aggregate, sand and stone, which is great. That kind of mitigates some of the builders with quarry tax, etc., having to use virgin materials for that. So that's something I'd like to see pushed hard. I think it's a quick win for Scottish Government as well, but also that technology is out there. It's already available, and we should grab what's already available with both hands, in my opinion. And to be honest, all those kind of materials that I've just identified there are all materials that energy from waste guys don't want. So it's kind of a win-win, if you like. Some of those are high CV, or obviously stone and sand they don't want. So it kind of, the glove and the hand fit there, if you like. But I'd also, maybe we should have a look at the lower rate of landfill tax and just see if that's kind of fit for purpose now, I think. With some materials being banned, is that right? Is it wrong? Do we have 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels? I don't know, but I think maybe landfill tax is something that we should look at, both at the higher rate and how it's used and how it's invested. And maybe we could use that to promote innovation and drive some action there and investment. So if we have these kind of bans, then investors will be happy to invest the money because it's very low risk. At the moment, it's a high risk because they don't know what the future holds. If we can kind of guarantee those things for them, then investors will come to the market. There's no doubt about that. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see alternative fuels. I know the people are talking about incineration tax. That's a burning subject. Sorry, the pun, but we have to be careful with that it doesn't stifle innovation. So I don't see the energy from waste guys dropping the gate fees because they're making a lot of money from electricity at the moment. But we have to be careful that we don't outprice Scotland PLC and we start seeing waste tourism happening. But I also think we've got to be careful we don't look at taxing everybody. People like glass furnaces and cement kilns and people like that. At the end of the day, that makes a product, and that product then goes back into the market, and that product will stop us using virgin fuels and fossil fuels and having to quarry. So for me, I think that's good. I like the biodegradable ban. I think that's something that's good. We've got close to the infrastructure now within Scotland on energy from waste plants, and it's not the be all and end all, but there's a lot of things you can do with energy from waste plants, and I'd like to see carbon capture introduced. I think I'm a big fan of that. I know John Scanlon at Suez has done a lot of push that quite hard, and I think that's something that I'd like to see. And then we use that carbon to make, for energy. Do we put it back into the energy? Do we use it to make something else? I don't know. There's immense technology out there, and once you guarantee that outlet, then the innovators come and the investors come. So long-winded answer to your question, but that's the kind of thing I'd like to see.
Well, we all love an answer that involves a pun and a win-win situation, so we can't complain at all, Robin. We've actually got another question for yourself, Robin, if that's okay. To minimise the carbon impacts of energy from waste, how can we accelerate the reduction of carbon impacts? The consultation talks about diverting plastics, but how is this going to be possible?
That's a very good question. I think we should probably look at that, turn the question slightly on its head a little bit, and look at how we can look at planning in a different way, for example. So if a big infrastructure project is there, and there's many of them in the central belt of Scotland, and I think it's called life cycle procurement. I think that's what I'm hearing, that kind of that name coming down the track. But is it a little bit like the plastics tax, which I think has made a marked impact already? If you don't use 30%, I'll use 30% because that's a plastic tax. If you don't have 30% of recycled product within an infrastructure planning permission, you simply don't get planning permission. And I think that would absolutely drive the market. And as I said, driving the market is key to the next step. And I think from what James walked us all through today, there are probably 10 or 12 steps. I know she outlined 5, but there's probably 10 or 12 steps that we've all got to go, up that ladder, if you like, and just take one step at a time, reevaluate another step. But you do need, right at the bottom, before you put that ladder up against the wall, you need investors, and those investors need certainty. So I'd like to see the planning kind of side of that. And I'd like to see, and I think that ultimately that would drive the reliance on virgin materials and fossil fuels. And that I think is a key answer to this whole ethos, in my opinion, of what James outlined today. And if you can do that, then that would be good. And I'm truly pleased that we're starting to see Scottish Government talking to the private waste sector. I've been a big advocate of this for some time, and it's great to see them coming to market. I think in the past, we were hit over the head a little bit too much with legislation, and they're now coming and asking, what about this? What about that? How would that impact? How would this impact? And I think that's good. I just think maybe Scottish Government need to listen and take advice. And if we say we don't think something can work, or there's already a piece of legislation in there that covers that, we should give it chance and give it some life and let it see if it does bring that. And if it doesn't lift that stone and empty what's underneath it, then maybe lift another one. But for me, I think that's kind of where I'll be. But definitely drive the market, and the way to drive market is to put things in, because everybody wants planning permission for things. So if they get planning permission, they have to use 30% of a recycled product. And I don't know, Andy might know the answer a little bit more to this than me, but that could be based on value, for example. So if it's a £100 million infrastructure project, 30% of that value, has got to be on recycled product, and there are lots and lots of recycled products out there to buy. At the moment, some are just a little bit more expensive than the virgin, which is not going to drive the marketplace, I'm afraid. If you reverse that, it will drive it, definitely.
Thank you for that, Robin. It's actually quite a nice link into one of the questions that have come in from the live feed. So someone's asked, globalization has resulted in capital becoming geographically fluid. What levers can the Scottish Government use to ensure that multinational corporations operating in Scotland comply with CE regulations? In that one. Oh, we've got silence.
That's a big question to unpack, actually. It's a valid question. We are on a global sort of marketplace now and different expectations. I think for us, the sort of prime focus and prime sort of responsibility at the moment is making sure that we have the right policies in place, which will then generate the right piece of primary legislation, which will then lead to the most effective regulations that we can put into place. Obviously, whenever you put regulations in there, you would need to enforce those regulations and make sure that you have good, clear systems for adherence to those. So we're kind of at the stage of getting our house in order at the moment with the sort of wider CE requirements that we have. The CE bill pretty much is a first pass, if you like, to ensure that we're actually getting some basic sort of fundamentals in place that'll drive progress in this area. But it's a fair point, and it's a point actually that globally countries are sort of wrestling with at the moment. And you can have home-based policies and priorities, but actually if you don't apply those to the multinational space, then it can make things very challenging and very difficult. So it's a valid question. I don't have a very clear sort of response to that at the moment, but it's something that we're very conscious of.
Thank you for that, Jane. Maybe something we can come back to later.
Andy was waving then, so I think we might have a regulator.
So I might just I might just sort of jump in. So I think one of the things I think is really important in this space is, well, we don't make all the products that we use in our day-to-day lives here in Scotland. We import a lot of products that are made elsewhere. Now, those product standards and that general move, certainly at European level, to make sure things are reusable, dismantleable, repairable, and recyclable, are all really important. And that takes global effort to shift global manufacturing trends. So one of the things I just really want Scotland, to continue to play our part in that kind of global space, making sure that we're keeping pace with European product standards and all the kind of innovation that's being pursued there, so that the products that we get and that we use in our day-to-day lives are actually sort of fit for a circular approach. We can't do that on our own, but we can do that as part of a global community, and I think it's really important that we continue to play our part in that.
Thanks for completing that answer, Andrew. Really appreciated. Okay, so to move back onto incineration, would the panel agree that incineration is not really pushing waste much further up the waste hierarchy than landfilling? And would reliance on incineration not undermine upstream measures to reduce manufacturer reliance on extraction?
Can I just jump in there quickly? So basically, two things to sort of stress there. We are in a very different space than we were, 10 years, 20 years ago, when the priority was to get everything that was being put into landfill out of landfill. And we operated pretty much in the kind of mid hierarchy from recycling down. What we're trying to do now with this kind of next wave of policy and strategic direction is get the focus on the top to the middle of the hierarchy. So it's all about addressing consumption. It's looking at prevention. It's looking at reuse. It's looking at maximising value of products already in circulation, with recycling as the kind of last choice in that little sphere of action. So we definitely wouldn't be pushing for a reliance on incineration. And that's part of the work that the independent incineration review was looking at what the capacity is, and if we give permission for more incinerators, are we going to have to feed those incinerators, and we're going to be pulling material and generating material to kind of basically meet their capacity needs. So it's a very, very interesting point, but I don't want anyone to go away from this thinking that, you know, we're all about saying incineration is the answer. We're about saying what is the best approach for materials that we have left that we can't do anything else with at the moment, but it doesn't mean in the future we won't be able to. So we're looking for innovation, we're looking for market opportunities, we're looking at other ways that we can bring technology through and innovate to try and maintain the value of resources. We know how valuable resources are. It's not just about keeping extracting and keep generating through the take, make, dispose model. If we move towards a circular system, then we wouldn't want to be having incineration play a really big part. But what we're saying is things at the end, if there is value from reclaiming energy from those, then energy from waste would be an opportunity there. What we're also saying is we've made significant progress to pull things out of landfill. So anything that literally is having to kind of get left at the end of that chain, we need to be re-examining it. What's the role of that material? Can we do things differently? So please don't go away thinking that incineration is going to be the kind of saviour. This package is looking at what the disposal options are for the bit that's left at the end.
Thanks for that, Jane. Okay, so to move away from the incineration side, let's look at another direction. So on the proposals to deal with carbon emissions from energy from waste, what's meant by industry ownership here? And Jane, let's put that one across to yourself.
So this actually builds on something that Robin said earlier about how we engage with the sector. And it's about tapping into that expertise of people who are working there, who have the experience there, and ensuring that basically we have viability in how we move forward. So it's not about imposing a way forward, it's about working together collectively. So we do need collaborative action. We need to really kind of foster those partnerships and how we work and explore as far as we can go on a voluntary basis. We wouldn't exclude the potential for management compliance with anything, but it's about using those relationships and using exactly what Robin had said. People have worked very hard in this space and have innovated in this space. So we open the doors, we talk to them and we say, how can we move this forward together? Because it's big actions that we needed.
Sorry, great. Thank you for that, Jane. You get used to being on mute and taking yourself off. Even though we've been doing it for 2 years, I still make mistakes. So Robin, if I could just pull you into this question, what's the sector's views and should this be voluntary or mandatory?
I think voluntary won't drive it. We've seen that in a number of initiatives that are voluntary, and they just, you know, you get a certain sector that will go with it and think it's a good idea, then others will just not do it because it might have a financial impact on their bottom line, for example. So, and also that generates uncertainty if it's voluntary. And I think it's got if one thing I think the waste industry needs right now is certainty. I think I think, so as I said, that certainty drives innovation and drives investment, and that's the only way you will get investment is if an investor puts £100 million into something, he wants certainty as well as £1 million. So that for me, it's got to be universal and driven by legislation. That's my personal view.
Thanks for that, Robin. And just to think of SEPA's perspective, from the point of view of SEPA, the environmental regulator in Scotland, what proposed measures in the package are absolutely essential for the protection of Scotland's environment? So, for example, our air or our water.
So in this particular package around disposals and the things that, I mean, obviously there's across the route map and the CE bill, there's a range of measures that are crucial for protection of the environment and, you know, developing a more circular economy. But in this particular package around disposal, the biggest thing for us, I think, is about delivering that biodegradable municipal waste ban. That's the thing. Delivering that by 2025, we'll have that carbon benefit, and also kind of continue that journey away from landfilling as being the thing we've relied on the most. 15, 20 years ago, there were 176 landfills in Scotland. Today, there's around 45. Landfilling is on the way out, but it's still a source of pollution, long-term pollution. It still uses a huge amount of land, and it still has significant community impacts. So just last year, just 3 landfills in Scotland were responsible for 980 substantiated odor complaints to SEPA. So that's a significant amount of our work is dealing with that, and it's a significant source of well-being impact for the people that live around this infrastructure. It's yesterday's approach, and we need to kind of make that step. So in this package, I think that's the most important one for us.
Thanks for clarifying that. That's appreciated. Okay, I'm going to move on to one of our questions that have come across from Twitter. So a reminder to everyone to keep those questions in the hashtags #LivingCircular. We are asking, what do panel members see as the priority actions to include in the proposed residual waste plan, and what's missing from the proposed plan? Who'd like to jump in on that one?
Can I come in with that one? That's a good question. What's missing there? I think one of the early questions about incineration, and it's not pushing, if you like, but if you'd have asked that question 15 years ago about landfill tax, everybody would have said the same thing. And I think Andy's right. And I just go back to that ladder step analysis. That probably was step one of this journey. And landfill tax has had a huge impact on the recycling of the UK and of the world, in my opinion. Energy from waste plants have given an option to that, and with the fiscal penalties of landfilling something, has brought innovation and brought investment into this industry, to the point where private equity, I think the waste management and recycling sector is the highest priority for the private equity sector. So that says a lot, in my opinion, of where it's going to go. But these guys want certainty. So I think it's got most things that's in there. I think it's a step ladder, and I think that's what needs to be clearly identified. And I know Jane's gone through her things, but I think the answer to your question, to the person's question, is that it's a step at a time, and use what's available. Energy from waste will play a part in this country for some time to come, in my opinion. But it's only one small piece of the jigsaw, and the whole piece of the jigsaw is plastic recycling, is plasterboard recycling, is mattress recycling. It's all those things that fit together that ultimately will drive those. And if you ban those from landfill, by default, you will get those out of them, because the energy from waste guys don't want them. So what else happens to them? The people will come up with innovative ideas on what to do to get those recycled and back into the markets. We're dealing with a company at the moment with our mattress recycling that are taking the poly back and the foam back, and they're reusing it. The poly's been reused. It's been sterilized and reused in the mattress market. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal what they're doing. And with the foam, they're also doing that as well for another different sector of foam filling. They're crumbing it, sterilizing it, and using it for something else. So that's innovation. That's true innovation, in my opinion. And those markets are there. They're out there. We don't need to landfill any mattresses, and we don't need to send them to energy from waste plants either. So that's just one kind of waste stream that I'm talking about, that you could, it's available there already. And the wash plants in Scotland that have come up, again, that's another marketplace that is out there. It can be used, it is being used, and it's diverting material away from landfill, and another market that the energy waste guys don't want. So it's either here or it's coming, and I think that's very, very important for Scotland. Well, I would say just on one of the things that I can't remember what the question was. We do have to have a little bit of uniformity with the rest of the UK, because if we have one rule and England or Wales have a different rule, we would be susceptible to waste tourism, either inwardly or outwardly. So we do have to, we have to watch what goes across the border both ways.
Sorry, my unmute button wasn't working there. It must have decided it didn't want me to answer there. Thank you for that, Robin. That's great. So that was a good point from Robin there. So while EPR and DRS are going to be positive, it seems that councils and private waste processors are waiting in limbo until the schemes start before making changes to their plans. What's everyone's thoughts on that?
Yeah. Okay. Go. Yeah. So I think in my years of working in waste policy, I've probably never known there to be more moving parts than there are at the moment, whether it's EPR reform or deposit return or the landfill ban or digital waste tracking or any of the other sort of policy measures that are in play at the moment. So there's a balance to be struck. We need that new progressive policy landscape. It does take time to deliver. And hopefully, as that stuff, it delivers the kind of certainty that Robin's talking about. But appreciate at the moment that there is some, there is a bit of a waiting game. Certainly, waiting with DEFRA to see what happens with the EPR proposals. But there's just a tension between trying to really develop that policy landscape and providing short-term certainty. We can hopefully provide long-term certainty.
And Robin, can you chip in on that one as well, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure we're in limbo. I'm not sure that's the right word. I do understand what the question is. I think it doesn't take Einstein to work out what Scotland's trying to do, and that's to have a landfill-free country. One that I think most waste management companies would support with the right backing and the right financial support and the right legislative support. And I think, as I said to you before, certainty drives innovation and investment, and we do need that. But the EPR scheme, I think you've got to be a little bit careful that companies can't buy themselves out of compliance. I think it has to be real. I'm more of a favour of things like the plastic tax than EPR. That's my personal opinion only. And DRS. There are already things out there that cover DRS policies, like the Scotland Waste Regs, commonly known as zero waste regulations. So they're in the private sector, and then in the public sector, there's the council curbside collection. So we do have to be a little bit careful on certain things that are covered. And I think I just mentioned it before. When we've got a policy in place, let's just see if it works first before we put that stone back down and lift up another one. And that's my only gripe is the wrong word, but it's my only suggestion to Scottish Government that let's put something and let's give it a chance to work before we say no. That's not every decision is a vote winner, and sometimes a long-term 10-year decision is a very, very hard one to make, because the party that's in who make it might not be the party that's in when it comes 5, 6, 7 years down the line. But sometimes those are the hardest decisions to make in life, but probably the right ones.
So one to tread carefully on. Okay, I've got another question here from our live feed. I like this question. So the short life throwaway society from when I was young through the late 70s and 80s is seeing quite a transition to the better made longer life products of today. Education, education, education from nursery and primary kids is a must and should continue right through the age groups by different delivery methods. To parents and to grandparents is a must. A comment from the World Sustainability Collective that really resonated was children are putting pressure on our parents, pressurizing parents barefoot in front of the fire to make the changes they demand. Really strong comment coming through there. What's the panel's thoughts?
First of all, could not agree more. We are seeing a real difference in how our different generations are becoming aware of things. So Generation Z, which is the kids at the moment, they are much more savvy in terms of literally being aware of the environmental challenges that we're facing, the education that's coming through. They're much more receptive to it. And yes, they are glued to social media, but actually there's quite a lot of information flow that they're picking up in those particular routes. And basically, we are really open to making sure that those channels are communicated effectively. Our comms team that we have at Zero Waste Scotland are fab at trying to really target the different generations and really kind of target how we can get the message home. But the children really are the ones who are putting that message in. Part of the package that we've got as well within the route map is focused consumption, education, awareness raising. So not just about the recycling, this kind of usual things that we're expected to see, but how we consume. So making better decisions as consumers. So thinking twice, looking at service models, looking at different ways, do we actually need all those things, revisiting our kind of attitude to that. And actually next week's webinar, we go on to the cross-cutting areas, which also has things like the green skills, which is very pertinent as well to the new job opportunities that are coming through within this space. So jobs that we haven't even thought of yet for the kids that are coming through and being much more savvy and much more tuned in. And we need that. We absolutely do need that.
And a great plug to the next seminar as well. Thanks for that, Jane. Okay, so I think we've only got time for one last question. So we're going to go to Robin for this one. So with regard to the proposals, what other measures would you like to see included?
I've probably covered most. I think planning, the life cycle procurement one that I mentioned earlier, the collaboration between Scottish Government and the waste sector, I think standing shoulder to shoulder now is good. And I think that's going to become more and more important as we go down this journey together. And it has to be together. It can't be singular. It has to be together. I think the ban on landfilling materials is essential. I absolutely think that's essential. And nobody's changed my mind yet on that one. And that will drive everything that we do. That is the driver, the big cog, if you like, in the wheel that will drive all of this. Because if we can't get an outlet for materials, then what's the point in banning the material or saying it can't go to landfill or banning landfill? Then what do you get? I'm not sure that it'll increase fly tipping. If I'm honest, there's different people have different views on that. But from what I've read, it doesn't really see a percentage notch from doing something like that. I think you'll always get fly tipping. Maybe make HWRC sites more accessible, more easier, then is probably the answer to that. I think the tax, the low rate of tax, the higher rate of tax, what we do with that money, use it wisely, and use it for people who are investing. If someone comes up with a good innovative idea, then let's back it. Let's do that. And that shouldn't just be left to the waste industry to back either. And I think that's some of the things that Zero Waste Scotland has been very, very good at is backing good ideas. And I'm not sure that happens in all the other countries, but it certainly in Scotland, it's helped a number of businesses get off the ground. And without that grant money, they would have struggled. But I've seen a lot flourish and flower off the back of that, and that I think that's important. And I know coming out of the EU has made that a little bit more difficult. But maybe that's what we use the landfill tax for. Maybe that's what it's used for, is to drive that policy change. And then for me, I think carbon capture for energy from waste is key, and then what you do with that material. And it is here to stay for a little while, energy from waste, but we can certainly reduce the volumes of that, and by banning materials or by coming up with different ideas to do those. So that's kind of my thing. I think just ask yourself, what would happen if Scotland government, if the SG just suddenly said, right, we're banning landfill in 10 years time? What would happen? People would gripe about it, but they griped about the landfill tax being introduced. But look where we are now. We're a million times better now than we were 15 years ago as a country, as a nation, as a world, probably. So that's, I think, something we should ask ourselves. What would we do? What would we do if we just said, right, that's it, boys and girls, nothing goes to landfill. We're not having landfill anymore. You guys out there between you all have got to come up with the answers together. But we're standing with you. We're going to back it financially. We're going to put fiscal things in. We're going to put legislative things in. These are the parameters. These are the rules that we play by. And I think if everybody knows those, then it's game on.
Thanks for that, Robin. Appreciated. Sorry for cutting you off there. I'm just conscious we only have a minute left. We had so many amazing questions coming in. Apologies if we didn't get round to yours. If you do have a question that you still wanted to ask, you can email it across to liveincircular@zerowastescotland.org.uk. So that just leaves me to say, if you've missed any bits, don't worry. It's been recorded and will be available to watch back soon on the events page. You can access this via Zero Waste Scotland's website or by going to zws.scot/webinar4. And if you have any further questions, then please continue to send them in via social media, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. For now, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for today. It's been great having you with us, and thanks to everyone who's tuned in and got involved. I hope you found the sessions useful and informative. I know I certainly did. And we will see you next week on the 11th of August at 1 p.m. for our next Living Circular webinar, which will focus on the theme of cross-cutting measures with a particular look at skills. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks. Bye-bye.